And it is my absolute pleasure and honor to welcome this guy.
Hey everyone, kia ora, morena.
How are you?
Welcome to everyone, GM from the Metaverse.
Love it. So Aaron McDonald, founder, investor, board member, advisor. Interesting fact, do you know that we have 958 mutual connections on LinkedIn?
No, I did not know that.
I bet you
I very rarely visit LinkedIn.
I know.
Like once a week maybe to check how many recruiting people are trying to send me invites to look for jobs for people in our companies.
How many of the 1,000 people do you think we mutually know?
That we actually know?
200?
To be honest, I'm selective with who I accept on LinkedIn. So So I guess on my side, they could be real people that we actually know, but I can't, like, there's no way off the top of my head I can remember 1,000 people. So probably not.
2 years ago when we used to be able to travel, we'd go to Australia every year as a family, and because my wife's parents live in Australia, and I got to about 5,000-6,000 on LinkedIn, and at December said shits and giggles, let's just see how many I can get.
Yeah.
And I got 4,000 in a month.
4,000.
Crazy. 4,000 new connections. Yeah.
That's crazy.
It is crazy. Hey, let's get back to you. So it's interesting for me, you know that we've done a few of these talks. We had Janine talking about crypto as an asset class. Brooke helped us into the world of NFTs. Then Jerome, we did a bit of our own payments. And then I had an awesome chat with Luke from Indigenous Collective in Titan Tiki, just talking about creative artists. And as by the way, as part of my journey, I got an NFT. Thank you, a Titan Tiki. I've got a fluff. I've got a thingy. I've got 2 sounds. So I learned when I was minting, I was trying to get a scene. I got 2 sounds, which I'm going to gift one of the sounds to a friend.
Awesome.
And I got a mysterious piece from music artist Diaz Grimm, which will come out shortly in a few weeks. So the thing I just wanted us to focus today a little bit was with you. Oh, there he is. There's Aaron.
The real me. Or was the other me the real me?
Well, this is the thing, right? Because part of it is I want to, like, where do you think we are in this meta world?
Yeah.
Right. What's happening and what's going to happen over the next few years? You know, because by reputation, you are one of the extraordinary people in the world who can communicate. I'm not trying to set you up, communicate. So, like, where are we in this journey into the meta?
Yeah, I feel like people are kind of maybe have the opinion that there's like a thing that will happen and then we're there. But in reality, we're already there. It's just like, a frog in a frying pan warming up slowly. Like the metaverse isn't a destination. It's a concept. And we're already in it to a certain extent. It's just begun to become more pervasive and more vivid and more overt in the way that we interact with the digital world. And I think it's probably important at that point to kind of muse a little bit about what is the metaverse, because how can you say, where is it at, or are we there yet, Dad? If, for example, we don't know what it means, or we don't have a common understanding of what it means. So in my mind, the metaverse is 2 things, really important things. One is it's a more immersive internet experience, and by immersive, it's not just VR and it's not just Web3. It's that today we kind of, when we engage with digital things, well, things in a digital context, they're quite separate. We have fintechs, we have social media, we have gaming, we have e-commerce, and
like swim lanes.
They're swim lanes. And the metaverse is actually the amalgamation of those things. It's removing the boundaries between what they are. Finance and gaming and social media and commerce will become a thing, an amalgamated thing as opposed to separate things. The way you experience finance will be through gaming. The way that you interact with commerce will be through social media. So the metaverse term is this more immersive digital experience, point one, that encompasses all of those things. And Tyler Ward, who's a good friend of mine, he did a good Twitter thread rant on what this is, and I'll send you the link afterwards because I think it's a really good summation of how these forces come together to create something bigger than the sum of them.
For the people who don't get it, right? Because you're right at the vanguard with a few, and then there are others that have been on this journey with you. What about the people who are sitting on the other side going, what the fuck? Like, what the fuck is this thing? And what's it going to be like? How do you explain it?
I think like I said, you're already in it, but it'll just become there'll become fewer boundaries in the UX layer between those things. So I think like a good example that might be tangible for people who aren't in in deep in the underground like me, would be, look at finance, for example. Like now finance is this distinct thing. I want a car, I find my car, and then I go get finance. Or I want a house, and then I go get a mortgage. And those two things are in quite separate swim lanes. But what we're starting to see is those things merge together. So the experience of getting a car includes, or it has finance embedded in that experience. And that will become more and more part of how you consume financial products, as they'll be embedded inside of a thing as opposed to being a discrete thing on the outside. People call that fintech, right? But that's the early stages of a more immersive digital experience where the product contains all the elements. And so you can see someone like Power Finance, who's in our portfolio, is providing tools to people to create those embedded experiences so that there isn't a distinction. You're not jumping from one thing to another. They're collapsed into a single thing. Or another example will be something like, an early stage example would be something like Facebook Shop. We went from communicating to commerce, and those were separate swim lanes. You clicked on a link and you went out of there to the website and you bought that thing from the website. Now it's in the experience. And so I'm browsing, I'm interacting with a social experience, and I can click buy. So that's like very early steps of what a metaverse looks like, is the merging of those separate streams into a single user experience. People immediately jump to VR and AR, and those are cool things, and we'll see much more of that as a layer of UX, as opposed to going to a website and browsing around for things. Stuff will be immersive. That's a part of it, but it's not what it is. It's actually the combination and reduction of the boundaries between those things to create what will be the economy. The economy will exist digitally almost entirely in the future. And this digital economy will be an amorphous thing as opposed to these discrete things. So that's like the first part of what the metaverse is this kind of amalgamation of swim lanes.
What's the second part?
Ownership. And the distinction between Web 2 VR apps and what the real metaverse is that users own assets.
Yeah.
They actually own them. So whether that's content, whether that's their identity, whether it's their data, whether it's the
avatar, whatever.
The avatar,
right?
The intelligence that sits behind processes, they own it. And they can take it between applications and no one can stop them doing it. And that's what a true metaverse looks like. It's an open space. It's built on open standards. It's giving ownership back to users and control back to communities. And so this kind of tug away from mega corporations that control almost all of the digital and tangible value in our lives to users being in control of those things. And instead of corporations being in control of the value and monetization, communities are in charge of the value and monetization. That's the second important part of the metaverse.
Is there a third part?
No, I don't think so. I think you could sum it up with those two things.
Tell us a secret that no one knows.
Some free alpha. So that secret that no one knows.
That you're prepared to share.
I need to be very careful here because
I'll go on.
Brooke wasn't. We're in the middle of well, that's Brooke's job. We're in the middle of some very big content deals with some very big global brands and IPs that are trying to figure out how can they migrate from the world they used to be into these kind of more community.
So a good example, right? I'm on a mate's channel on WhatsApp, right? And one of my mates owns a traditional media buying agency.
Yeah.
Right. And his son is a music artist.
Yeah.
And so he's been investigating NFTs for his son, but then he's been looking at the media buying world and going, I should be in here.
Yeah, totally.
I need to get in here. Yeah. And are the big brands buying stadiums and in the meta world now, trying to put their logos on it?
Yeah, I think there's like this kind of naive, nascent step, which is like people can see something's happening. They can see culture and community evolving in these spaces. They can see capital flowing to those spaces. And they're like, shit, we need to be a part of it. How do we do that? You know, you might get something as stupid as the McRibs NFT from McDonald's as a, like, we're here, we're in the metaverse. Through to people who are really thinking deeply about how it will ultimately impact their entire business model, and how can they be part of where things are going, as opposed to how can they slap their brand onto a fashion trend that's happening right now.
Which is an interesting question, though, because one of the things you've said is that the opportunity with this new world is the distribution of power to community and to individuals. But then all of a sudden you've got these centralized large corporate organizations jumping into the metaverse and NFTs. Aren't they going to just like try and create a control thesis?
The metaverse.
Sorry.
Yeah, so I think, like, because we're such early days, we're going to see this explosion of everyone calling everything the metaverse. Just like when, cloud came around, everything was cloud, and AI came and had its time, Y2K. Everything was AI. And yeah, like we're creatures of habit, and we tend to go in these cycles, and we're right square in the hype cycle at the moment for metaverse. So naturally, that's going to create a lot of noise about what this is. People are going to throw weight behind it, either seriously or to look like they're keeping up with the Joneses. And emerging out of that will be the winners, who I believe will be the ones that are built on open standards, open communities. And there's two reasons for that. One is, it used to be that in order to, maybe I'll take a step back. Like, you have to imagine that in the future, not too distant future, the primary economy will be the intangible creative economy.
Yeah.
Because automation will take the jobs away from everything else. And as the population continues to grow, intangible experiences will probably be the major experiences that people have, because the tangible ones won't have capacity. Like, we already have this problem in New Zealand for tourism, for example, right? We have, more people coming to, well, not right now, but, at the peak of tourism, more people coming here than the attractions can actually take, and it's having a detrimental impact on those places, those special places. That's not going away, and it's going to get worse. And so intangible experiences and the intangible world and intangible assets is going to be the primary economy. Already, 80% of the value in the S&P 500 companies is intangible value.
Yeah.
So this is the economy. It's not like this thing on the side. This is where the future of the economy is. As automation picks up, and we're seeing like massive steps in ag tech in New Zealand, for example, and automation of process that require manual labor, all of these kind of industries that are automating out humans in those processes, is going to lead to an economy which is primarily driven by the creative, intangible side of things.
Does that give you optimism?
I think it does. It's kind of, you can look at the world through two lenses. You can look at through the Black Mirror lens, which is, you know, this horrible dystopian outcome. And there's not a bad chance that that happens. Like, we're stupid as humans. We tend to pick bad options. But at the same time, I feel like it frees up humanity to like focus on things that could take us further, you know. And one of the cool things about the metaverse is, you know, the metaverse, if it's this kind of truly community driven thing, is that it's unleashing creativity. You can see it in Fluff World. Like, people are learning how to become creative people in this process of owning these assets, and in a way that they never would have done it before, or would even have an incentive to do it, or have emotional connection to it. Because, and you know why? That's that second part of what the metaverse is. It's ownership. It's mine. I'm doing this because it's mine. It's not something that you can take away from me at some point. And so, so I think this kind of creative economy is going to be the economy in the future, and that's driven by these other kind of macro forces.
So if you think about, like, you were a telco guy.
Just to finish the first point, I was kind of giving the background to, is it used to be that in order to have a viable creative job, you know, to create value for yourself, to put food on the table for your kids, to create wealth for your family, that you had to have massive community scale. Like, if you're getting pennies on the penny for Spotify plays, then you've got to have millions of fans. Now, because you can cut out all of that middleman in the process, you can have viable small scale communities, which is awesome, because now creative people can connect with people who truly love what they're doing, and it can be viable for them to build a life around that, and do that in a way that was never possible before. And that's the really exciting thing.
In numbers, have you got any idea how big the NFT and DAO community size is right now? Like, numbers of projects? Is it like 100,000? Is it 1 million?
There'd be hundreds of thousands of NFT projects.
5 years from now, how many?
More.
Like a lot more. Exponential.
Because of this micro scale thing. There's two forces that will drive more, right? One is the fact that as more of the population starts to interact with it, there are more people interacting with the content, and therefore there'll be more room for them to create more content. And two is, it's this kind of churn. You know, people's attention spans are limited, and so you know, no one's going to subscribe to Netflix to watch the same content forever. They have to keep putting new shows in there to get people kind of engaged. And so
community building is going to be really important, right, for these projects, even at what we might think of. It is everything. Now, telco guy and a corporate venture guy, what was the trigger that got you into the crypto world? Because that's actually where you started your journey in this, right? Like, was that your brother? Was that you?
No, it was me. I kind of, like, I'm a nerd, and so I'm always kind of reading about stuff that's nerdy, and I'd come across Bitcoin, and, you know, had a look at it. Yeah, about 2015. Had a look at it. Was kind of like, this is interesting. I could kind of see that there was something special there with this double spend problem. It wasn't until I kind of came across Ethereum that I got really excited, because then I was like, wait a minute, you can create cloud infrastructure that's owned by communities. That's a game changer. And it was a a happy meeting, actually. A friend of mine, Dr. Luca Muller, who's a lawyer based in Switzerland. He and I were having a chat here down in New Zealand. He owns a law firm up there called MME, and we were kind of, talking about this obscure thing, smart contracts. And I was like, how does a lawyer, know this much about this obscure nerd technology? Turns out him and his firm were like deep in the early pioneers of coming up with the legal structures around things like the Ethereum Foundation and Cardano and stuff like that. And so, and he invented this thing called the blockchain crypto property framework, which the FINMA in Switzerland uses to classify digital assets, and really smart guy. And so he introduced me to a bunch of other people in the space, and then I was kind of like,
you just went,
yeah.
And then it's just a series of patterns. Let's just shift then to Fluff World, right? And kind of like, where have we come from? So if the way I see it, we have a fluff, we have scenes, we have sounds, we have things, and then we have these intelligence boxes, right? This fucking box. I still don't know. I think I heard that the unveiling of the box is early December, but
1st of December.
1st of December. So, like, on 0 to 10, where are we in Fluff World right now? 2?
2. Yeah, I'd say 2.
And by the way, I just want to note that you didn't tell a secret. So
yeah, I did that well, didn't I?
Yeah. So, like, what's next?
I'll say this: we're doing a mega scenes and sounds drop. This hopefully announcing this week, and bringing a whole bunch of awesome musicians together to create. Sorry, it's my wife in the background.
That's all good. It's all good. We're all in family. I've been messaging my family upstairs going, can you stop thumping around? They're like,
yeah, I think to create like something really unique in the and to add into both Party Bears and Fluff World characters. So that's a little bit of alpha for you guys. Stay tuned for this kind of mega drop with this great collection of artists that we pulled together with Geo from Six Agency, and I think it's going to be pretty cool, pretty exciting.
Scenes and sounds.
Mega scenes and sounds.
And can you interchange and flip them around the whole time?
Yeah. So one of the things we thought about when we were kind of thinking, how do we get into the metaverse? Because in reality, it's kind of been a thing we've been building to for the last 5 years. Centrality and ScenesNet was very focused on how do you get consumer mass adoption into these decentralized system space. Because if it's just a few nerds playing with it and trading coins between each other, then you don't really fulfill the benefit of this different paradigm of changing the system unless you can get masses of people on board. So we've always been kind of investing in how do we make user experience journeys better? What are the infrastructure that's needed around this space to bring people on in a safe way? All of those kinds of things. And so when NFTs started to get some traction, we were like, okay, this is the killer app for consumers because it's content. It's not some nerdy like DeFi thing, even though DeFi is super cool. Most people don't even know how money works between their banks, let alone how this new version of the internet money could work. But getting them engaged around content was something that was a really powerful moment. And so when we looked at that, we're like, well, what does this look like in the future? Like, what is the metaverse that everyone imagines there to be? And how can we build an architecture of technology, of storytelling, of world building, of content that gets people to that point of experiencing what they imagine the metaverse to be when they think of Ready Player One or something like that?
Your team meetings, your creative team meetings must be pretty epic.
It's wild.
How do you make sure all you guys and girls keep the secret?
Well, you've had Brooke on the show. We do a terrible job out of it.
Are Burrows coming in December?
Yes, Burrow-Sember is a thing.
Now, question. My wife and kids have an aversion to spiders.
Oh, yeah.
And they think the thingy looks like a spider.
Well, it looks
Have you
like a
heard that?
spider, but it's a thingy.
Can I change the coat of my thingy?
No, that the process of which the coat came about is a special one, and you wouldn't want to change it. So each thingy is a piece of art. We trained an AI to look at 10,000 paintings and then paint 10,000 paintings. And then each one of those paintings forms the UV map for the fur on your thingy.
Oh, does that mean I have to match mine?
Well, yeah, I mean, so what you might have noticed is that most of the thingies ended up with a painting in their background that didn't match their fur. So there might be something coming down the line for you to play with to try and match them and see what happens there.
That's pretty funny. That's new. Now, really good question. For someone that's thinking about investing in a fluff NFT, what do you think are the types of income sources one might expect to see from the metaverse? And you know,
really good one. I mean, so I think the most important thing to do when you're looking at NFTs is to pick the ones that you love. You know, like
that you dig.
Investing's like a side benefit for most people to being part of this community that's doing cool shit and being involved in something that you love. I think also it depends on your like goals and ambitions. Like if you're a creative person and we've designed fluffs so that the users own the content, like when you own your fluff, you have commercial rights to it. You can go and create with that and build something for yourself that leverages the community, monetize that however you like. That's cool.
So you could go and put it into someone else's.
Yeah. So like Angel Baby's a really good example, right? So they have a fluff, and what they're doing is they're turning their fluff into a metastar. And so they're building a music business around their fluff. And so for them, the income stream is not even dependent on us. It's like we've got this content, and now we can turn that into a business for ourselves. And so that's like step one is like just having the rights to the content enables you to go and create stuff, and then that creates value. And within the fluff community, we've got like people building derivatives of their fluff and selling them as artists. We've got people connecting music to the fluffs through the sounds and scenes and selling their music.
Can you breed?
You will be able to. Yeah.
Interesting question. In the physical world, we have things like Labradoodles.
Yeah.
Like, can you have like fluff bears?
Who knows?
I'm just asking for a friend. Or, or could like I got a female fluff, right? But could two males breed?
Well, we haven't released any of the breeding mechanics yet. So okay. We'll get down the track on that. I think it's being clear that you need both a male and a female to produce a flufflet.
Yeah, there's 70% male and 30% female.
Yeah.
For those of you who haven't been on the Discord servers, that is a crazy world, isn't it? But anyway, let's move on.
That's an example, right? So in Fluff World, we're always trying to give value back to the community. And if you're building a good Web3 company, that's what your aim is. And I was thinking about this last night. I was like, how do I sum up, the economy of Web3? And what it does is it takes our tendencies for being greedy capitalists and forces us to come up with ways to include community and distribute wealth in order to make ourselves wealthy. So it's kind of harnessing
that's an outcome of doing
the powers of evil. You want to be successful, and you're greedy about your own success. But in order to achieve that, you absolutely have to give back to your community and build value for the community. It's this very different economy, which is non-zero sum, where if we're together building value, then we're all going to do better as a result of that. And so how can I give back to my community, create value for them, and then that keeps the flywheel going. So within Fluff World, there's layers to how we're building value. There's the content itself. That's grown in value because people love the content. They own most of that. 95% of the growth in that value is owned by the community. We've helped our community take something that cost them $3.5 million and turn it into something that's worth $100 million. And they own 95% of that upside. And then we've got, the different content drops that come along. So each time we're dropping one of these pieces of content, people value that and they're prepared to buy it off others in the community. So that creates value for them. We had someone who got a robo thingy, take that and was able to go and buy a house. They got enough money out of the selling that to go and buy a house. We're helping people get into houses by being creative. Where we've got the next layer on top of that, which is, the content monetization that people can take and do, like going and building the cult of Fluffulu DAO. Then they're turning that into a media business and going to produce content out of that using fluffs as the inspiration for that content. And then
you can't shoot music into at this moment. You've got to buy music from the Fluff marketplace, right? You can't, like, I love Lauren Jin, who's a friend who's got, who's an artist. I can't use her song and pay her into my Fluff yet, can you?
Yeah, so yet. Yet's the question. And I think the key thing there, so when we do these scenes and sounds, this isn't a technology problem. We could do that today. But what you want to do is you make sure that the way content is introduced into the ecosystem follows this community ethos, which is each of the community members can take any of our songs and go and remix them. We've had people, platinum selling artists, do this, remix the songs and create their own content and monetize that content. So it's about the rights journey, not necessarily the technology journey. And when we release stuff into Fluff World, we want to make sure the rights are clean so our community can go and be creative with it.
True or false about you? Capitalist or socialist?
Well,
it's not true or false. Choose, if you had to choose one, capitalist or socialist?
If I had to choose one, and they're both terrible choices, I think it's much more important to care about communities than to care about yourself. So
where did that come from? Are you were you born up in Auckland? Brought up?
No, I was brought up. Well, I was born in Palmerston North.
Okay.
Probably the most unlikely place for someone to work in the metaverse to come from. And I grew up between the Horowhenua, which I spent my early childhood in, the Wairarapa and the East Coast before coming up to Auckland.
How did you get to Auckland?
Rural community.
When did you come to Auckland?
I spent just around a year working in Russia, helping to start an organization that was bringing aid into the far eastern region of Russia, Dальний Vostok region, to street kids and orphanages. So when I came back from Russia, I landed in Auckland. I needed to get a job. Wow. And so I started digging ditches.
How did you go to Russia? Was that like a volunteering thing?
Yeah. And my first wife was Russian. So
there you go.
I traveled there with her and spent the time doing that work over there. I grew up actually as a missionary kid in the Philippines. My parents were missionaries. So I guess part of how I've been brought up is to kind of think about others before yourself. And
which is a beautiful thing. Have you always been action orientated?
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah.
Curious?
Very. I'm always trying. I spend probably a third of my day reading.
Eilish is a good supporter to you, right?
Eilish makes my life work.
Yeah, she's amazing. She's amazing. I used to be an EA myself, so I power up to anyone that provides that support role. They are incredible, right?
Absolutely incredible. And I would say if you're in a position where you're growing a business and you're thinking about like value for money in terms of hires that you could make, get yourself an EA. A good one will like double your productivity.
Do you say yes to everything?
No.
Do you say no?
I say yes. I say yes to more things than I should say yes to, but I spend a lot of time now trying to figure out how to say no, because I've created 5 companies that are worth over $100 million each in the last 5 years, and I have across the portfolio now almost 60 ventures, and so there's a lot going on in my life. And
a lot. I did the company's office check on Aaron McDonald just before.
So I need to be focused if I want to cut through and get to the point that we're trying to achieve with all of the stuff that's going on. We need to be really deliberate about the things that we do.
Someone wrote a story about it takes 10,000 hours to master something, right? And so I was just sort of thinking about that and thinking about your journey through crypto and Meta. Do you think there's a math formula on hacking this web world, this Web3 world, this Meta world? Like,
yeah, I do. In fact, almost, if we look 5 years ago when we started Centrality, one thing that inspired me to create what we created with the first venture ecosystem was this Harvard study on the success ratio of startups and all the things you need to they made an equation of all the things that need to go right for you to be a successful startup. And you have to execute on all of those things. And then it turns out you have to also be lucky. And serendipity is probably the biggest factor in success or failure. Even if you're good and you have a good idea and you execute well, you also have to be lucky. And what I wanted to do was create an environment where serendipity played a lesser role. And so how could you get different people who are working on different things to work together to grow each other? That was kind of the thesis of Centrality. And that's what Web3 is about. It's about collaboration, co-creation, open innovation. This is why, you took anyone who's a naysayer on Web3, you're going to get killed. Your business is dead. You just don't know it. And the reason for that is we move 10 times faster than you will ever move. And the reason we can move 10 times faster than you'll ever move is because we're all building in the open and we're building on top of everyone else's ideas. No one is starting from scratch. The Lego bricks that are being built, 5 years ago, enable people to assemble things in a faster time frame, in a more robust way than you will ever do in any other technology paradigm. That's why it's going to win. It moves faster than anyone else, and it's community oriented, and it's built in the open. If you're doubting it now after 5 years of seeing what's happened in the ramp up to Web3, that's the thing you need to think about: is we move faster, and you'll never beat us.
What are do you look back ever?
Yeah.
When you think about the Centrality ride, what are your reflections and learnings from that? Like an epic 5 years, and still, the ecosystem's still there.
It's if I look back, it's probably people decisions. That's been my biggest learning, is making sure that you choose the right people to go on the journey with. And there's been a few times where I've made bad choices on that front, and it's slowed us down, and it's cost us time and opportunity. And so now I'm much more careful about the people equation.
If we thought about the Web3 meta world around elements of the supply chain, value chain, right? In preparing for this, I thought about coins, exchanges, infrastructure, data privacy, compliance, capital markets, digital assets, tokens, payments. Have I missed it? Because you just see it, and then you get in it, and then you start going, wow, there's a whole lot of layers. And it seems to me you've got involved in different parts of the value chain as you've gone, wow, there's like payments is a big area of opportunity, right?
And we're about to do something mega in payments. It's going to be fucking cool.
In both worlds?
Both worlds.
And a bridge.
Yeah. So yeah, you're right. So one of the things about like getting in on this relatively early is that nothing exists. So it's like, well, what do you do when you're trying to solve a problem and nothing exists? Oh, we've got to build a company that does that thing, or we've got to invest in a company that does that thing, or we've got to find a founder who has a vision for fixing that problem and get behind them. So like we just by osmosis ended up with all of these ingredients of how to build the metaverse. So we've got Silo as a communications protocol. We've got Centrapay to connect and bridge, Web3 with the physical world. We've got
ASM.
We've got Fluff World. We've got SensNet itself. We've got
what does SensNet do?
So it's because we started on this journey thinking about user onboarding for the masses. What SensNet is it's optimized for where the metaverse is headed in terms of a layer 1 blockchain optimized for metaverse experiences. And
does that mean
identity, payments, NFT assets, all of the user onboarding, user safety features that you would expect from like a traditional application is what the team's been working hard on. And really now is their moment to kind of start to shine. And we'll be starting to show some integrations with the likes of Fluff World and stuff like that to help people kind of resolve some of the issues you have. We're going to be putting out content on a very regular basis. You can't be paying $100 gas fee on Ethereum to change your song if you want to change it 10 times a day. That's just not practical.
I went to change the name. The family have been talking about what we would name our Fluff.
Yeah.
And I went to change it, and I was like, fucking hell, it's 70 grand gas fees just to change it. I better get the name right.
Yeah. And so like we've come up with this solution where you can have like the best of both worlds. You can have your primary assets and liquidity and all the cool things about Ethereum mainnet, but take all the kind of gamification and put it on a second layer and have those two interact. So that's what we've been building up to.
Brands that inspire and inform you.
Good question. Airbnb, I think, would be one. Like both in terms of the way they've built the business, but also like the ethos of the founders. They're always like looking for the right thing to do and the best way to do good.
Companies that are going to die over the next 5 years. Brooke talked about the likes of Spotify.
Yeah, 5 years. I think there's going to be a serious change in the 5-year period to banks who don't embrace Web3. I feel like social media companies who don't figure out how to change their user experience to the more immersive experience are going to die. I would like to think, there's still a chance that Zuck gets it right, but if you look at kind of the underlying fundamentals of Facebook, it's a zombie already. We think of it as a startup, but actually it's 20 years old or whatever, and all of the lead indicators are shit. And it's no surprise why they've decided to rebrand, because they have a toxic brand, and also culture's moved on from them and communities have moved on from them. So they're trying to play catch up.
This meta world and the DAOs, and power to community, power to people. What do you think those people think of Facebook claiming the name Meta? Don't you think that the community are going, that's just a dick move?
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly the wrong thing to do, because what you're doing is you're alienating where the culture exists by usurping, that term and trying to claim it for yourself. And cultural icons always build from the fringe. It always starts in a yucky part of mainstream's view. Crypto is like that. The internet was like that. Like all of these things we've gone through in terms of cultural moments over time, they always start on the fringe. They always start in a place that seems like, what are those weirdos up to? And Web3 is no different. And now that it's become a $3 trillion industry that is taking over the world, these brands are starting to get scared. And I see Facebook calling Facebook Meta the ultimate concession that they know they're on the wrong path and they need to try and play catch up. But it's just a dick way to do it. It's exactly the same way that someone who is, so wealthy and so
sounds like my lunch has been made. Can you hear that?
Yeah, I can. It's exactly what someone who is so wealthy and insulated from reality would think is the best move to do for their company.
Why did Unity buy Weta Digital?
They're smart.
Because they need that engine to produce content. If I had an investment in a digital human company that is like a supermarket for the creation of digital humans, would my investment be looking good?
I think the category is a good category to be in at the moment. Yeah.
Who are the sleeping giants in the meta world?
Well, come on. You're here right now.
Yeah, no, other than you. Like, are there people out there that you go, ooh?
I don't think. I think it's too early to tell, to be honest. Would be my honest opinion. It's too early.
All these old world companies must be thinking about it, right?
Yes.
The brands.
I'm talking to them every week.
Yeah.
Like I again, one of these things that kind of the naysayers on Web3 don't get is that we're in conversations with the executives of every major content brand in the world. Like, and they're serious conversations. They know what they're talking about. They have a non-superficial understanding of the space. They're definitely going to do something. So yeah, it's kind of interesting to see how much activity there is now. And like I said, we're in the hype cycle, and some of that will die away, and the true community builders will prevail. That'd be the thing that I think on your list that you asked earlier. Communities is the secret ingredient.
So let's just think about that in the context of New Zealand and the opportunities for New Zealand, right? Both, and I'm kind of thinking about. I'm not thinking about for the lawyers or accountants or investment bankers, right? I'm thinking about our diverse communities, our wahine, our youth, our Māori, our Pacifica. Like, what do you think for them?
Opportunity of a lifetime. Why? Because no one gives a fuck in the metaverse. Like, I showed up today as a rabbit, and you can show up with who you are and whoever you want to be, and as long as you're part of the community and contributing to the community, people don't give a fuck. I mean, not to say that there aren't toxic elements, and there are, but for the most part, it's a very accepting and inviting world, and the boundaries that existed before for people putting their talent to work are being broken down every day. No one gives a shit who you are or where you came from if you create great content. No one cares what your race is or what your sexuality is if you create a great protocol. All of those things are gone, and the ability for communities who have been behind doors and denied opportunities by the system that exists today can skip the system. The gatekeepers are gone. You can now go direct to the community, and if your stuff is good, they will embrace you.
Do you think
that's the massive change? The second thing is, sorry, just to kind of
no, you're all good,
because I'm quite passionate about. I'm a Māori founder myself, and there aren't enough of us out there. And And I think one of the super exciting things about what's happening now and what's happening in the future of the metaverse and the creator economy is that community has awesome creative talent. You know,
Amazing.
it probably hasn't been nurtured well enough to kind of get them into the digital space, but they just have bucket loads of it, and now's the time to go and turn that into wealth creation for your communities.
Do you think they believe they can?
I hear from people every day in our communities who believe now. You know, we had there was a lovely note yesterday on Twitter that I got sent by someone who joined the community and has become inspired by it, who lives in South Auckland, and you know, and they can see a path for themselves now. They can see a viable future where they can engage and they can be creative and they can monetize that creativity.
Put your venture capital hat on now. You're an investor, right, in this space. You're like a Movac or an Icehouse Ventures. So you're not Aaron. What would you do if you were them looking at this meta world? Would you build an index fund? Yeah, come and talk to Aaron. Because it's hard to pick which one's going to succeed.
Well, yeah, you're right. It's early days. I think the number one thing that a smart VC could do is get into the communities, because you'll be able to tell very quickly whether something's on a track to success or not.
Yeah.
There's, you know, that's the lead indicator of success, is how deeply your community is engaged with what you're building and how involved they are in what they're doing. You jump into like a lot of NFT project discords and it's like, oh, the floor's this and when are we going to double that and how are we going to pump this and blah blah blah, and you jump into Fluff World and it's like these people love what they're doing. They love it, you know, the community they're building together. They love the content they're creating together. You know,
I met I think a fellow Fluff owner on Twitter, and I was like, I looked at her location and I was like, it's 3 in the morning. And she's still up, and she's like, yeah. And she said she was going to go to bed and then come and watch this.
That's the lead indicator for success. You know, there isn't a better community in the world than the Fluff World community right now. So I would look at that if you're looking to get into the space. I think that's the most important indicator of what's going to be successful on the content side. I mean, the infrastructure side, you know, there's
an index fund mightn't be a bad idea though, because it creates patterns and it gives you portfolio spread, right?
You need to have a good index fund, successful index fund. You kind of need to have a bunch of relatively, you know, later stage organizations to provide stability to the index. So we might be early-ish in that journey. That's my only kind of thought on that side.
If we think about that opportunity for community in Māori Pacifica, you know, what worries you about fulfilling that opportunity and it being real, right? And for more families to cross the digital divide?
Well, I think access to tools and education, you know, that's got to be high up the list, because you've got to have a way to execute that creativity and engage with the communities and with the technology. So there's still like a barrier there that needs to be overcome. And
so that's kind of like a educational marketplace.
Yeah.
Got a place for guides to be able to help people, because, you know, my experience is I just leaned on whoever would answer me on Twitter, right?
Yeah.
And I can't create. I say I can't, but I you know, like Pat, my co-founder at Manaki, he got down the rabbit hole, and you know what he did? He went to TikTok and he looked at all the cool kids on TikTok, and then he went away and said, right, I'm going to actually create my own NFT.
Yeah. Cool.
and he's going to release it, and it's freaking amazing. But you know, that creating that place for people who can feel that that's a place they can go for trust, learn, adapt, meet other people. That's going to be pretty important, right?
Yeah, and I think the second thing would be like belief, like, you know, giving people examples of successful heroes in their communities and showing them that it's, you know, that the pathway there does exist. You can do this. I think also making sure that when we bring vulnerable communities into the space, that we look after them and it's a safe environment for them to come into, because it is still a bit of the Wild West, you know.
It's crazy.
You know, Web3 is early days, and it is, and because of that, it is a bit of the Wild West. Well, you know, the Wild West had to happen to get what we have as America today. But we're in that phase of the journey. So I think there needs to be kind of focus on education and safety, and making those first experiences in the space positive.
Are we doing some shit things in New Zealand around the infrastructure, government policy? Like,
I wouldn't say we're doing shit things in terms of government policy yet, because there has been no policy.
Do you pay GST on crypto?
That's an area that's been given some attention by IRD, and they've come up with what the industry thinks is a good solution, because it was like a double taxation solution before. So
do you pay GST on crypto if you're trading?
Resolved. There's difference between, so I think the way to look at it from a financial markets point of view, not financial advice, is New Zealand has pretty good financial markets regulation that is technology agnostic and is adaptive. And we hope as an industry that is how it continues, because what you should be looking at as a regulator is, what does the thing do, and how does the user or the owner interact with that thing? Because cryptocurrency isn't a thing. It's like, well, do you pay tax on cryptocurrency? I don't know. What kind of asset is it? You know, is it like gold? You know, do you pay GST on gold? No, then no, you shouldn't pay GST on that. Is it like a bond? Is it like an equity? Is it like a piece of art? So you have to kind of look a layer below cryptocurrency to answer the question about tax. And I feel like that's the, you know, the path we've been on with the FMA. They've provided good guidance about where things fall into being financial products or not financial products. And it would be a shame if the government turned around and applied technology-specific regulation to this one area of technology. Like, no one goes to the bank and asks them whether they're on Oracle or IBM before they rate a financial product. They look at what the product does and who's buying it.
Now, question for you. You know, I didn't get in, and Pat and I and Rach and Monty, we didn't, at Monarchy, we didn't get into the meta world because we wanted to make money, right? We observed through the creation in our communities and with Monarchy, the situation with our creative artists and musicians, digital, physical, and we kind of saw in lockdown last year, their value chains were just pretty, you know, terrible, right? And there were lots of people in the middle. And so we first saw the situation and the missed opportunity. We're like, this is hard, right? How can we help those people sell more shit on Spotify, right? Or at galleries? And then we started getting into this meta world, and then we're like, wow, you know, we're like, you know, the traditional world stuff still stands around community, but we started to get pretty excited. It's come to the point now where we as Monarchy have gone, if we're a trusted brand and a place for them to come to, then how do we fulfill on the obligation that we now have because of what we see? So my question for you is, you know, should a community like Monarchy do a token release?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the best place to start when you're thinking about these things, and it's going to sound cliche, but it's absolutely true, is what problem are you solving is the first thing. And then how are you solving that, and for who, and then once you've got that, you can say, okay, well, does applying tokenomics to that problem make it better, faster, or the opposite, more complicated and harder? Because there's this temptation to say this, but now a token, and now it's going to automatically be successful, without kind of thinking about what's the, particularly with tokens. My view is that tokens are by and large only useful in protocol primitives. So that's
because for us, we can see the opportunity to help and contribute, and you get, because my history, and you go, and we don't want to bring a control thesis capitalist model to this. We want to empower the community, but to do that, we've got to find the economics that work for monarchy itself. And
so go on that journey. It's like, okay, so what if you actually got there? I mean, we're kind of riffing in real time, but if you got a collective who wants to release art, okay, well, let's say that's a thing. How do you want to monetize that art? Well, we want to monetize that art in Web3. Okay, well, what's the process by which monetizing that art intersects with something like a token? Well, that could be governance. What the
because what I'm doing is I can see the projects, the initiatives coming up. What I'm trying to get my head around is what the monarchy community itself as a collective does.
Yeah. So what's your job? What do you got to kind of, what's the value you're adding to the process, and if you're adding value to that process, is that the kind of value that a community should be a part of? If a community is part of that process and part of that value, then a token could be useful, because what a token is a vehicle to organize community around.
The thing that is the hardest thing for entrepreneurs and small business owners is being alone. Right. And being alone is not enough to create engagement. But once you create community and you put content and engagement in there, and in our world, you do it at scale, many to many. Our first iteration was one to many, really powerful and learning. But now we're trying to create this many to many. And it's extraordinary also because, we moderate. We're the whole value chain of go to government, get approved for a voucher, get some money, wait 3 weeks for a mentor. All that shit is gone. And all of a sudden you're like connecting people together.
Yeah.
And making, so it's a journey that we should probably go on a walk sometime. That Eilish might
we'll do a walk. We'll do a walk.
Have all the things you've been involved with been successful since day one?
No. And that's a good thing, because if you've never had a failure, then you probably haven't learned anything.
We're getting near the end, and I've taken up a lot of your time, but take yourself to the 15-year-old student, right? So people don't know that you've got 2 kids and you've congratulations, just had your second, 3 weeks old, which is pretty epic. Take yourself to to the 15-year-old student from your local school in Palmerston North today. What would you be saying to him or her?
Stay curious. I think that'd be probably number one.
Stay in school?
I didn't.
What age did you leave?
17.
Yeah.
And not because I didn't do well at school. I did exceptionally well at school. I just got bored with it.
Yeah.
I finished my school C when I was like 14. So I'm not saying don't stay in school, kids. Like, I think that can be a valuable path of, growing up, is kind of going through that experience and kind of learning from other people's perspectives. It just wasn't the path I took. I think the other thing would be, make sure. So I think a lot of why I've been able to be successful is because I've had good support structures around me. My brothers, for example, we've been, David and Jeffrey, like we've all been on this journey together, and having people who have always got your back, I think has been like something that was really valuable, and probably I didn't realize at the time. I think the learning that I've had now that I might take back and tell myself is be much more considered about who you bring, close to you, and you're making sure that what you're trying to achieve and what they're trying to achieve are the same things. And it's not like I've had evil people, on this journey with me. That's not what I'm trying to say. It's like people have different objectives in life, and if your objectives aren't aligned, then it's going to cause tension at some point, and that's going to lead to kind of less than desirable outcomes. So like make myself aware of that fact back when I'm 15 would be a good thing.
Perceptions can be very dangerous, because if I look at the patterns of your reaction and speed by which you work on Twitter and Discords, and the thing that's quite extraordinary is what I see as someone who moves incredibly fast. But in our kōrero today, I can see that you're very reflective, and if anything, like your heart rate is lower, like you're sitting back, and it's super interesting to have those two worlds, right? Like I sit most days next to Monty Beetham, where his resting heart rate's 30 something. And it's an extraordinary skill to have, where you can do both those things.
Yeah.
Like, have you had to work at that, or is that just the way you are?
I feel like it's the way I am. I don't know why. I don't have any insight into why, but I feel like I've just always been that way. Yeah. I guess people would tell me at the same time that I need to bring them on the journey with where my brain is at, but also be like, if shit goes down, you can trust Aaron's going to have a level head about it. Like, I guess that's just always been how I have.
It's a beautiful thing.
Thought about
hey, can I just say thank you for taking the time?
Oh, thank you.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed, and again, learned some more. I wasn't nervous about interviewing Brooke. I was nervous about interviewing you just because I kind of see you as one of the founders in this space, and it's a super, super interesting place. It's the other thing I'm kind of pretty excited about is in upcoming talks, I'm going to talk to John Henderson from Airtree VC, who's got into this Web3 world. Sam Ranloo.
Yeah, John's good. Yeah.
He is good. Jess.
Yeah.
She said she's a bit. She said she's a bit busy.
She is busy. I mean,
why is she so busy?
Well, they're building the burrows for a start off, but that's just the start of what we're doing together.
Do I get a burrow with my fluff, or do I get the opportunity to get a burrow?
You get the opportunity to get a burrow. Yeah.
Okay.
And they're super cool spaces. I mean, I feel like we're going to set a bar again for what small scale metaverse spaces are going to be like in the metaverse world.
It's pretty exciting. And then thanks to you, I'm actually scheduled to talk to Rahila and Nick Bruckman.
Yeah, Rahila's a legend. She's a very well-connected person. She's kind of the woman behind everyone and everything that's going on in the metaverse space. So that'll be a really great chat. I really love talking to her, and she's such a kind person too.
She is already. I've noticed that. So hey, kapai. Thank you very much. Enjoy. I hope has your daughter been sleeping, or have you heard in the background her
noise cancelling headphones? They're amazing.
Have a great rest of the day, Aaron. Thanks, buddy.
Cheers.
See ya.